Hello and welcome to this afternoon's Artist Talk. My name's Nicole Yip and I'm Chief Curator here at Nottingham Contemporary. And I hope you will all have had an opportunity to explore Charlotte Johannesson's exhibition in our galleries upstairs. We're really delighted to have Lars Bang Larsen here with us. I can't think of a better person to be in conversation with Charlotte. Lars has, in so many ways, paved the way for the exhibition here at Nottingham Contemporary. He's been instrumental in bringing Charlotte's work to international recognition, and together with Mats Stjernstedt, curated Charlotte's first retrospective at the Reina Sofia in Madrid in 2021. So for today's event, Lars will begin with a presentation, and then we'll be in conversation with Charlotte. There will be an opportunity for questions from the audience at the end. We just ask that you wait for a roving mic to reach you before speaking. A few quick housekeeping notes. I wanted to take this opportunity just to thank my colleagues, Janan, Philippa, Jim, Andy, Holly, and Jenna for making this event possible. And finally, whilst today's talk is free, if you do enjoy the work that we do, please do consider making a small one-off donation on your way out. So without further delay, I'm going to hand over to Lars.
Thank you, Nicole. And thanks for the invitation to come here and speak about Charlotte and be in conversation with Charlotte. I'll start with making a presentation. It might be a bit on the academic side, and I'll be reading, but I can promise there'll be some nice images, and it'll be over shortly. It'll be about 20 minutes, I think, so hopefully you'll bear with me. So looking back at the work that Charlotte created from the late 1960s and onwards is precocious, for one thing, for how it joined the loom and the computer, and thereby subverted a range of binaries, including those of art and technology, craft and counterculture, male and female work, visuality and tactility. At the time, neither of her chosen media were institutionally acknowledged, and it's only now, well into the 21st century, that her work is really gaining attention and a reception, with presentations at the Reina Sofia in Madrid and also at last year's Venice Biennial. And now this beautiful exhibition at Nottingham Contemporary too. We can speculate that several factors conspired against an earlier and wider acceptance of Charlotte's work that was dominated by the unnatural fact of her being a woman who made art with machines. Besides, Charlotte is a self-taught artist who was never a presence in the art market, and her artistic attitude was characterized by its paradoxical mix of escape and confrontation in dialogue with cultures of dissent of her time, including 60s counterculture, feminism, punk, and the urban guerrillas of the 1970s. With this in mind, the body of work that Charlotte created between the late 1960s and mid-80s can perhaps be summed up as something like proto-cyber-feminist textile punk, to propose a term that is as homegrown as Charlotte's own style, with all due respect. But this is also an attempt to sum up the edge and the precociousness of Charlotte's work, and to suggest how it challenged gendered assumptions of contemporary art at the time of its making, and how Charlotte, through her work, interrogated and played with social conflicts and contradictions in the historical space of its making. In the early 60s, Charlotte trained at a school called Hemslöjden in Swedish, in her native city of Malmö. This was a traditional textile crafts education where, as Charlotte puts it, you weren't allowed to have your own ideas. Inspired by the example of the Swedish-Norwegian weaver Hanna Rögen, Charlotte started at the end of the decade to create art weavings. With a voice that belonged to no one and to everyone, Charlotte enhanced weaving as a medium that was mythically associated with female isolation. You know, we know of the Greek myth of Penelope, who's waiting faithfully for Ulysses to come back, in spite of the fact that there's 100 suitors sort of wanting her attention, and she sits there weaving while she waits for Ulysses. Charlotte is doing something completely different, not waiting for a man to come back. At Charlotte's workshop, nicknamed Atelier Cannabis, slogans and sentences began to braid their way into her work in a way that's comparable to concrete poetry's sense of the materiality of language. In this respect, something that characterizes Charlotte's work from the time is its paradoxical propagandism with which it delivered quick and hard declarative messages with the softness and the slowness of the woven image. Charlotte seems to have deliberately exacerbated what the art historian Rike Frank calls the ambivalence of textiles. That is, how the textile medium is on the one hand attractive and disarming due to its haptic qualities, while on the other hand it manifests contradictions in terms of class, race, gender, and recognition. On one level, Charlotte's work was punk before punk. It was bad art and bad craft. It's loud, enraged, and disrespectful. She vented her dismay at General Pinochet's military coup in Chile in 1973 and proposed death as the one true redeemer of the Swedish welfare state's promise of universal equality. We're all equal, sure, in the end we are. Eschewing tropes of left orthodox political art, Charlotte imbued weaving with an extrovert and skeptical force, and her textiles reimagine artistic media through a repurposing of the loom's mythological and folk humanistic connotations to engage with contemporary crises of representation. Charlotte's weaving had an aspect of what the hippies called media freaking in the 60s. And media freaking to the hippies was a sort of a PR technique, if you will. It was the staging of provocative public events by appropriating technologies or media that were ordinarily used for the making and dissemination of official truths. And while the media freaking of the hippies usually took the form of political street theater, Charlotte used her loom to travel further into the ambivalences and paradoxes of textile art. For instance, by flipping embroidery and its stereotype of demure and subservient femininity. Here it's no choice among stinking fish that's made on the occasion of a general election in Sweden in 1973, where Charlotte mobilized the question of woman's worth or worthlessness inherent to embroidery and pitted it instead against the flaccid institution of patriarchal parliamentarism. So in this woven image that looks like it's stitched, figures representing the different political parties in Sweden are marching on blindly under a couple of ornamental firearms. But if Charlotte employed media strategies that were aligned with or inspired by hippie militancy, her image politics was elsewhere than countercultural style and countercultural togetherness. And as Charlotte tells it, she distanced herself from the hippie and situationist crowd around her artist partner Sture Johannesson because they were so macho. And as a feminist, she stuck to herself and didn't take part in collective work or discussion groups. She went her own way, even within the collectives or communities that she was part of. In a recent text, the artist Nana de Bois-Boul, who's Danish, characterizes the work of another Danish artist from the 20th century, Ragnar Brase, as work that speaks of an inward expansion that Brahe undertook in order to reach out to the world. And I think that something similar can be said about Charlotte's artistic attitude. She goes deep within in order to reach out into the world. So there's a mix of something activist and something contemplative, to put it like that. You could also say that as an author, Charlotte was and is a bit like a channeler or a spirit medium, someone who communication passes through and whose agency and expressivity is ambiguous in a productive way. And while Charlotte considered political violence indefensible, together with her partner Sture, she curated a tribute exhibition to the Red Army faction co-founder Ulrike Meinhof at Stockholm's Kulturhuset in 1976. One of Charlotte's weavings for the exhibition, one that's also in the exhibition here, depicts Snoopy from Peanuts playing at being a World War I fighter pilot. Frei die Raff, it says on the roof of his kennel that carries the German colors, Free the Red Army faction. In this work, there is a tension, to say the least, between, on the one hand, the childish Snoopy, who comes out in favor of the Red Army faction, and on the other hand, the conventional political aesthetics of the Meinhof exhibition and its extremely politicized context. So this was a few months after Ulrike Meinhof had died in prison in Stuttgart. And the year before, in Stockholm, RAF members had carried out a siege of the West German embassy, during which 3 people were killed. And the exhibition was closed after 2 days by the authorities. This was just too controversial. Refusing to build meaning on existing political ideologies and visual orders, Charlotte's weavings take apart representations that circulated in a violently contradictory media-born reality by transfiguring these representations, string by string, into images with their own ontology. And when it comes to the punk side of Charlotte's proto-cyber-feminist textile punk, as I said before, it is as if she intuited or channeled punk before there was such a thing as punk in music. Or it was the case that she in her textile work came to the same conclusion as the Sex Pistols did in music a few years later. And as it happened, Charlotte and her partner Sture met the Pistols on their first tour outside of the UK in the summer of 1977. And the Johannessons interviewed John Lydon, the lead singer of the Sex Pistols, before the Pistols played at a discotheque called Barbarella in the city of Växjö, which used to be a peaceful place, I guess. I'll just play a couple of minutes of the interview.
Now that thing scares me. I hate talking into microphones because you can't talk the same way as I would normally. I get all... No.
You have been to West.
Yeah, I went there for a holiday. For a week, just to see what it was like. I had to go there. I had to see the wall.
Yeah.
And it scared me. Those Russians, they terrified me.
Yeah.
That's horrible. I even wrote a song about it.
You have?
It's called Holidays in the Sun.
Are you familiar with the West German political scene, the anarchism of Baader-Meinhof?
Oh, Baader-Meinhof, yeah. I know of her. I know a mob. I don't know what they were into. I never bothered to find out. Because it's like English papers didn't print it. They started the stories, but they never finished them. and I don't have any other way of finding out unless I go to socialist meetings, which I'm not going to.
There has been written some glimpses about...
She killed people, didn't she? Or they did, didn't they?
Yeah, they made attacks. It was in solidarity with the Vietnam people. They made attacks on the American headquarters.
Yeah, but they killed people, and that's no way to get your point across. Because they killed innocent people. They must have.
In a way,
So this, so this was the summer of July 1977, and I think John Lydon must have been 19 years old at this point. At one point during the interview, he says, when asked by Sture and Charlotte what are the Sex Pistols all about, he says, well, we're about trying to make people think for themselves once again, if they ever did. So, soon after that, 1978, Charlotte acquired an Apple II Plus computer, which was the first mass-produced microcomputer, as they were called back then. Until then, computers, and this is the forerunner of the personal computer as we know it today. Before then, computers had existed only as hulking mainframes in the service of the state or the military or big multinational companies. And soon after this, Charlotte and Sture started the digital theater in their apartment in Malmö. A self-organized platform, the digital theater, was probably one of Europe's first artist-run studios for digital art. And so called because, as Charlotte put it, we were playing on the notion of the free theater groups in Sweden, a free theater group that would be free of actors. So a kind of post-human media freaking, if you will. The Johannessons undertook a trip to Silicon Valley in 1981 to acquire computers for the digital theater. And this trip included a visit to Silicon Valley and the obscure and fledgling enterprise Apple, thereby making the countercultural trajectory of the two Scandinavian hippies come full circle through the burgeoning Californian cyber economy. By swapping the loom for the computer, Charlotte activated material and historical connections between the two technologies, connecting their shared modern history that overlaps in the mechanized jacquard loom of the Industrial Revolution. You could say that Charlotte's experience with weaving allowed her to unravel technological progress and feed the microcomputer of the late 20th century back to the mechanical loom of the Industrial Revolution through female agency. In this way, incompatible binaries represented by the two machines, analog and digital, coding and weaving, material and virtual, handicraft and cybernetics, and so on, became malleable constituents of a new sensibility. Charlotte taught herself how to program her Apple II Plus so she could make screen graphics and drawings to be plotted. This was before the printer, so you didn't print images, you plotted them. And the Apple II Plus came without a graphics program, so you had to learn how to program in order to generate image on the screen. And Charlotte coded images in the same number of pixels that she had image fields in her loom. And in general, she approached the computer with the same lack of reverence and the same attention to visual texture that had inspired her to deconstruct textile work. But now in smaller images and more repetitive sequences of images that relativized the sloganeering force of her weavings. Charlotte's digital graphics channeled contemporary mass media and the flood of images that they carried with them, as if the future reality of the internet had already taken root in her nervous system and allowed her to forge an escape vehicle that could take her to another world. In 1984, Apple presented a new generation of computers, now with a closed graphical user interface that made Charlotte feel less creative. It made her feel restrained and less creative to explore. And with this, the digital theater faded, closed down, and Charlotte largely, but not completely, ceased her artistic activities. And all of this stuff is very contemporary. And not least Charlotte's playful subversion of techno-patriarchy and its political economy of thinking machines seems very today. For one thing, you could say that Charlotte's work prefigured the British culture theorist Sadie Plant's analysis from the mid-90s of the gendered historical relation between programming and weaving that qualified the loom as a feminine or feminist technology. Sadie Plant was also an early proponent of the notion of cyberfeminism that, as far as I know, was coined by an Australian collective called Venus Matrix in 1991 in their Cyberfeminist Manifesto, where they write, among other things, "We are the virus of the new world disorder, rupturing the symbolic from within, saboteurs of Big Daddy mainframe." To the German artist Tito Steyer, with whom Charlotte exhibited at the Sao Paulo Biennial in 2016, Charlotte is, quote, "an important precursor to the wave of digital art that until now constitutes the only art historical innovation of the 21st century. By being completely focused on its own time, Charlotte's work managed to effortlessly span millennia of female-connoted technological development," unquote. Also, I'd also like to quote the Danish artist and novelist Amalie Schmidt, who also wrote beautifully about Charlotte's work. Amalie writes that, quote, "Charlotte's digital works are the product of a very specific period in the history of the computer and of the encounter of a particular craft with that history. Back then, the question, what is a digital image, could be answered by the number of hours it took to manually color 53,760 pixels, which is what Charlotte did when she was making images at the Digital Theater on her Apple II Plus. And it took quite a few hours. Yeah. I think really. Yeah. So Charlotte's work is having a deserved moment now, and I guess we are beginning to see what it was that Charlotte saw back then. But then why did she see and do things differently back then? I'd just like to cast a brief look at the institutional context for her work that can suggest, I guess, how the appeal and the availability of modern and contemporary art at the time must have seemed limited to Charlotte. So I'd just like to exemplify with two exhibitions from the 70s about machines. And one of them is an exhibition from 1968 that was curated by the trailblazing director of the Moderna Museet in Stockholm, Pontus Hultén, who curated the exhibition The Machine as Seen at the End of the Mechanical Age at MoMA in New York. And this was an exhibition that had a strong showing of Russian and European avant-garde work, with which the machine juxtaposed artworks and feats of engineering, including models of Leonardo's helicopter and Tatlin's tower, lots of Duchamp, as well as some snazzy automobiles and an afterthought of pop and fluxus and kinetic sculpture. It was an exhibition that covered 500 years of Western civilization, and Hultén's exhibition staged a historical struggle between human and machine. With the car and the camera as its examples of technological modernity, the machine focused on a projectile gaze and forward movement. It was also an exhibition where the loom and other machines associated with the domestic sphere were absent or excluded. I guess they just didn't fit with this heroic, humanistic, historical narrative of Hultin. So even if Pontus Hultin deserves credit for including important women data artists, such as Hannah Höch and Elsa von Loringhoven in his exhibition, it was also an exhibition that inadvertently demonstrated the gender slant in what the philosopher Rosi Braidotti has called humanism's restricted notion of what counts as the human. Besides, Hultin's show also performed humanism's restricted notion of what counts as a machine and of what machinic agency can be. The Swiss curator, which is another big name curator from the late 20th century, Harald Seemann, he was also fascinated by machines. And his exhibition, Les Machines Célibataires, or Bachelor Machines, that toured European venues between 75 and 77, including the Kunsthal in Malmö, also had Duchamp as its protagonist. Seemann's Bachelor Machines was an angst-ridden show that explored modernity's flip sides with a twisted eroticism and a philosophical inclination. And Seemann's show put male desire over social morality in no uncertain terms, in a post-Freudian and post-modern exegesis of the machine as a modern myth of obsession and sublimation. In gender terms, however, Seemann's exhibition was probably even worse than Hultin's. As the arts historian Caroline Jones writes about Bachelor Machines, crucial to the ideology of the Bachelor Machine was the existential fiction of its autonomy as a male generator of forms and activities, no females reproducing here. As curatorial and institutional perspectives on modern avant-garde art, the masculinism and the sexism of Hultin and Seemann seem blatant today, though it probably wasn't extreme for its time. On her side, Charlotte invented other means of reproducing herself as an artist than through the canonized strategies. And I guess the evergreen quality of her work is how it came into being through and at the same time unworried and problem-oriented exploration of technologies that prop us up as individuals and collectives. And this was an approach that resulted in her work's playful capacity for irritating parameters for categorization and artistic production. And I hope she'll be back for the questions soon. I'm getting towards the end now, so that was an unfortunate moment. It just yeah. So thriving in tensions between art and everyday life, between protest and inward expansion, Charlotte's work did not reaffirm a countercultural erasure of the art concept through style and collective belonging, nor did it privilege the modernist avant-garde dialectics of anti-art and utopianism. With her weavings and digital graphics, Charlotte perforated the cultural fabric of fine art, creating openings through which radical questions reappear and confront us in their own strolling fashion. Save as art? Yes, no. That's what I had, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I talked a lot, but yes, by no means.
Very interesting.
I think so. I don't do you have any comments or corrections?
No.
All right, well, that's generous. Thanks. I mean, there were lots of things I didn't talk about your production and some of also I touched on some of the works and sort of the groups of works and some of the artistic media that's in the exhibition, but not all of them. So
No.
that's something we should talk about.
Okay.
But but maybe to begin with, I mean, it's clear, I guess, that your practice is not a conventional studio practice.
No.
And something that's important to say, I think, is that you made sure to create rooms of your own that fit your needs. So you didn't simply place a loom or a computer in your studio, but you created spaces for working with them. So you had your weaving room in Studio Cannabis, and then you started the digital theater, your programming workshop. I guess this speaks to several things in your practice. I mean, for one thing, it speaks to a sort of do-it-yourself kind of attitude.
Yeah.
But also, it also speaks to the radicality of your attitude and how you sort of massaged and negotiated conventions of authorship. But I guess the artist studio was never really a model for you.
No, I didn't need a special studio. I always, have my space at my home and make it integrated, like you can say,
So integrated in your home?
Yeah, in my life.
Yeah.
The cannabis, Atelier Cannabis was outside, but I just had it for, I think, 1 year. And it was a farm company. It was business. So, yeah.
But do you think this would have been different if you had an artistic training, if you'd gone to art school?
No, I don't think it would have changed. I think I had flipped out from it.
You would have dropped out of art school,
I want to do it my way, in a way. Yeah.
I mean, today there is an art school in Malmö, but that started in the 90s. So
you have to go to Stockholm and
in the 60s,
or
you had to
maybe
go to
Copenhagen.
Yeah. But I mean, back then Malmö was, I don't know if it was an industrial city. It was one of the industrial centers of Sweden. So there were a harbor, there were shipyards.
Yes.
So it was a working class city. Your father worked in the shipyards.
Yes.
As a welder. I think it's safe to say that you were a hippie when you were young, and a lot has been made of the animosity between the hippies and the punks. But that seems different in your case. It seems that you rather embraced punk.
I mean, in the beginning of the 60s, when this hippie thing went on in London, for example, it was, and in Copenhagen. I lived just opposite Copenhagen, and it was a natural thing, this hippie life. It's after I was in school in the 50s, and it was really, Brexit.
Yeah.
So, it was a freedom to...
Yeah, so sort of the hippie lifestyle promised the freedom. And was that something you recognized in punk? Because I mean, someone like John Lydon would say, "Oh, I hate hippies," but maybe that was more of a family quarrel between subcultures.
I think that there were many similarities between. They also wanted something else. They want some freedom, and they always said that all these big rock and roll artists are just playing on this big stadium, and that they wanted to take the music back to the ground or small places. And
so there was a
and there
do-it-yourself
was
attitude.
I know. There was they want their freedom. They want to say that well, all these big stars are gone, and now it's us.
What did the music of the Sex Pistols mean to you?
Well, I don't know. I like, of course, some of them. But as music, maybe I more like the California style. Yes. That God Save the Queen
so you were a fashion victim.
God Save the Queen was, funny.
But
we were here in 77 and take around to Scotland and so, and we bought this record, and everywhere I go and ask for, you have Sex Pistols? We don't stock it. But at last we found some place, and we bought 10. And took it to first to Berlin and then to Sweden. And,
To Berlin?
Yeah, on our way home, because we were driving. We went to Berlin, and we had some friends there and played it for them. And everybody loves it.
That was God Save the Queen, wasn't it?
Yeah.
As a single.
Yeah, it was a little single.
Yeah.
I have one left.
I mean, there's just to go back to your artistic attitude. I think, I mean, you. Unlike many other artists I know, the whole ego thing about being an artist is not yours.
No, I'm just a normal person.
But I wanted to ask you, and that's something I only found out recently, actually, that some of your weavings were made for being placed on the floor. Is that right? Is that correct?
No.
All right.
Only one.
Only one of them.
Yeah.
All right.
And then I have It was said. It was a yellow weaving. It says. I can't remember now. It's so long. I haven't seen it for 50 years. It was something about galleries. Oh. Yeah. No.
All right, but it's okay. So I'm wrong. They were all of them.
Were made for hanging.
Apart from they were made for hanging. Yeah. I guess we can also mention that the reason why some of the weavings in the exhibition look very new is that because they are new. They are exhibition copies. That were made for. I mean, some of them were made for this exhibition in Madrid, and others were made for the Sao Paulo biennial.
Yeah.
And that's
I had the patterns left, so that's why it was possible to make a copy. Yeah. Yeah,
that's right. But much work of Charlotte's has been lost.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the originals have been.
Yeah.
But the exhibition copies are made from the patterns. Yeah. I mean, speaking of the patterns, I mean, when you look at some of your textile work from the 70s, it looks like you were inspired by a digital style, or that you had computers in mind already before you started working with your Apple computer. I mean, like the pixelated Snoopy in Friday Raff.
Yeah.
Were you already looking at computer art at this point, or Was that another intuition of yours to connect the loom and the computer?
Yeah, I always did this a pattern on graphic. You call it graphic paper?
Or graph paper?
Graph paper, yeah.
Yeah.
Square paper, I say.
Yeah.
And yeah, I always have been interested in mathematics also. So I think I wanted to have a picture I will do must be exact as I recall it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was how the woven image sort of originates in a graph paper.
Yeah.
That translates the
And that's why
sensibility
it was
between...
easy for me to understand this Apple computer, because one square is 1 pixel. So
Yeah. So
many people think there is a very big difference between weaving and this computing, and for me there wasn't. It was another thing, but it was easy for me to make pictures in this apple when I recognize how it works.
Yeah.
And it took, I think, half a year really to understand it. Because I had no program and nothing. We always said that hands-on and try.
So it took you 6 months to learn how to program and create images?
Yeah, it did.
And how many hours did it take to make an image on the Apple II Plus?
You mean take it out, to make a print?
Well,
to make a
to
picture
program
in...
and to plot it.
To plot it out took between 15, 20 hours. Because I just had this little printer that architects use. And I could have one pen, and it was one arm. So it was, it was a very special program that for every pixel, the pen had go down 12 times to make it fill. So it took a very long time.
Yeah, and it was literally pens. It was like ink pens, right?
Ink pens, real ink. Yeah.
So that's...
And I'm glad I did it in real ink, because the colors are still...
You can tell it on the quality of the print.
Yeah.
What was it like to work with digital art back then? I mean, today technology is so integrated and everything, but I mean, in the late 70s, must have been something else.
It was so funny, because nobody has done it. And that's, that was the... Yeah, I liked it, and I could work from 8 in the morning to 2 in the night, and all around. It was fascinating, and really,
What did other artists think of?
Oh, they think I was crazy, of course. Many people said, "Oh, computer, you can't use computer." And why not? Oh, it's just for war and, terrible thing. But now, who hasn't a computer? The thing was also, I have seen the big thing, IBM computer, because my husband did some experiment with a programmer at IBM. So I've seen these big boxes and so. But the difference was with this Apple computer that it was a personal computer. It was mine, it was personal. I didn't have any big thing behind.
Yeah,
It
so
was a personal computer, like a like a loom.
So the computers that Sture worked with at IBM were mainframe computers, yes, as big as a house, literally. Yeah.
There has to be a programmer.
Yeah.
And he was lucky to find Sten Kalin. He was, well known over the world.
Yeah, so Sture had to work with a programmer in order to.
Oh yeah, he could make
images,
an idea, or I want to do a paragraph, and Sten was working on to make it.
Yeah. I mean, there's several different versions of the story of how you got your first Apple II Plus. I think according to one of the stories, you exchanged your loom for an Apple II Plus. Is that the correct one?
Yes.
Okay.
I changed to weaving.
Weaving.
I'm no angel. I'm no angel.
Okay.
Yeah, and it has been remade in Stockholm.
Yeah.
And it was a young guy who had been in California and bought this apple. And I think it was 78, 79 maybe. And he liked my weaving, and he said, "Oh, maybe we can change." And we did. So that was my first apple.
Yeah.
Then we had seven Apple machines connected to a big memory, 20 megabytes. It was, that was something. Yeah. We had many people coming and looking because it was so new. And there was some guy from the States who came and said, "Oh, how fast it's running." And,
it was totally avant-garde at the time.
Another time, yeah.
I mean, there's also some work of yours that in the exhibition that I didn't mention. There's the new lace work that you created for the exhibition here.
Yeah, there is some lace work I did. I think it was just in the beginning of the 90s or maybe the 80s. And I learned to make lace in 78, I think. And then I did some, but it takes a long time. Oh my God. But it's funny, and I like the style.
Yeah.
But then I haven't done a lace for, I think, 20 years. And then when I should make an exhibition here, and I heard that lace was really something here, I got the idea, maybe I should do something. So I've started again, and now I think I will go on and try to make it in colors and so on. We'll see. I try to make Robin Hood at least.
Yeah, noticed. Yeah. Yeah.
And, yeah.
What about the paperworks? Because
the paperworks I did between 90 and 94 in Lessebo, handpaper bruk, vad heter det? Handpaper.
Was that factory?
Factory, yes. Yeah. And that's very interesting also, I think, to make from this paper mass and to try to make a picture.
Yeah. And it's a very different way of creating images than both weaving and programming.
Yeah.
And in some of the works, there's almost nothing left of the image, because it's sort of, or is the image reduced to its materiality and to color?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I like to try different, and I like to this hands-on thing.
I don't know, maybe we should open the floor to questions.
Yeah,
If there's any questions
if
for
anybody
Charlotte.
has some.
Thank you so much for this fascinating talk and for the conversation. I was really curious. I know Lars was talking about your studio. I was also really curious about storage and maintenance, and how did you keep the work? For example, in terms of the digital work, did it have to be transferred into different computer systems to be able to preserve it? Or did you keep some of your weavings? I'm just really curious about, given, as I understand that the work wasn't widely exhibited during, during those years, how much commitment and energy did you put into preserving it for the future, so that we can see it?
Well, the textile you can roll. It's easy. And this computer graphics, they are all original. And well, I just put them in a box and forget about them for 30 years. And I must say I was surprised that the color was so bright, and looks the same. But I haven't done anything special.
No, it's a good question. I mean, also because I guess you're not the most archivally minded person.
No, I put
guess you
them
can
somewhere. I think they will survive.
Yeah, and also you didn't have anyone to help you with storage.
No.
So the digital images were they were sitting in a box in
when
in
you
floppy
came
disks.
and looked at them, they were in these boxes. And you said, "Oh, you must show them." And
but they're wonderful, absolutely.
And the motif on is. I don't know. It's what you are interested in. It must come out in a picture, I think. And my interest is very much in science and the universe, all that.
Yeah. But I mean, you did sell work at an early point, but that was mainly to friends, I guess.
Yeah, mostly.
So it was only in when was it? When did you make your first sort of museum sale? The Malmö Art Museum has a couple of your works, but that's.
It must be to Malmö, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
I sold some in Norrköping.
And some in Norrköping. Important.
Yeah.
But that's fairly recent.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Thank you for the talk. I wanted to ask about, you said you're going to be doing more lace making, and will the digital be influencing again what you create in lace?
I don't know really how it could. I mean, lace making for me is by hand, and but if someone asked me, I could think about make them with machines also, but I haven't thought about it.
Thank you. If I've understood you correctly, the starting point for your digital art was drawn out on squared paper. your weavings, did that start in the same way? And if so, how did you decide which way to represent the original image? And what did that process add, do you think?
Yes, my weavings, I started with this square paper, always. But when I begin with the Apple machine, I realized that I don't have to use the paper anymore because I have the paper on the screen. I have only 239 pixel times 190. So it was like a paper. So yeah.
But also you're also asking about what it meant to develop what would later become the weaving on the square paper.
It would be a piece of art in itself, wouldn't it? Yeah. But you're translating it via digital imagery or via the computer, and what that process adds, and why change from switch from one form to the other? Was that just you moved on from one form to another, or did you make choices around pieces of art about how you represented it?
I started to make quite another pictures with the computer than I had with the weaving, I think. And when I did a pattern for weaving, I have to be, it could take very long time because I want it really exact. And then when I found it, now it's finished, then I could start weaving. And I weaved it, string by string. But when I started with this computing, I could do it in another way. So I could try things all the time. And it was not so easy to say, now it's ready with this computer, because you can always go another, So, yeah.
I'm interested in the political nature of your work. I was very taken by the Red Army faction image that was shown earlier. I was interested, I think in the introduction there was a suggestion that your work wasn't ideological, and yet I think when I see a representation of the Red Army faction, I see ideology in that image, almost as if you as the artist are supporting or promoting that ideology. And I haven't got a problem with that, by the way. But is there a contradiction between trying to maybe be non-ideological, but through the political nature of some of your work being aligned with an ideology? Is that a contradiction?
I was not so interested in the Rote Armee faction. I was interested in Ulrike Meinhof, because she was a journalist, and I know work that she did, and she was very much into teenage people and helped them, and so. It's not so easy to understand how she could be involved with Bader, because he was just another thing. I was just interested in Ulrike Meinhof, but I did this. I don't know how I got the idea, but I think I couldn't really take it too serious, this Rote Armee faction. And when I started to do the idea, I was thinking Snoopy, American, and RAF, it could be Royal Air Force. And and I know that people in the Rote Armee faction didn't like the picture at all.
Yeah.
They think it was too funny.
Yeah, there's...
Yeah.
No, sorry. Yeah, there's this great story that,
Yeah.
I mean, this was an exhibition that was censored.
It was when we had done this exhibition, then we got in contact with these hangarounds. They contacted us, some young German guys, and asked what I mean about this picture. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so
They couldn't really take it.
they couldn't take it, no.
No.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, so the Stockholm authorities closed the exhibition after 2 days because
Yes.
this was.
And it was because
too
of the
strong
king's
stuff.
married to
Yeah,
Sylvia.
yeah, so the exhibition opened on the day of the royal wedding.
I think one day before.
Was it one day before?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
yeah. So which was.
And there was lots of, secret service all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah. And the Swedish king's wife's father was a German industrialist who had factories during the Nazi era.
Yeah.
So factories that employed slave labor from concentration camps. So this context was that was the pretext for the exhibition, the immediate pretext. And I think that, yeah, and as you explain also, your interest was Ulrike Meinhof.
Yes.
Specifically, also because she was you singled her out because she had a special.
Yeah, she was special.
She was, yes.
Yeah.
It was not Andreas Bader, for instance,
no,
who was a lout and a hooligan. So it was Ulrike Meinhof as a feminist icon.
Yes.
Which, I mean, it's strange to look at today because it seems so abject and far away.
Yeah.
But there's this great story that you mentioned of, I mean, after the exhibition was censored by the authorities, and Sture and Charlotte became these sort of anti-establishment heroes, who really stood up for the revolution. And all these people came out for the revolutionaries came out of the woodwork and were like, comrades, we want to see the work. That now we couldn't see the exhibition because and then Charlotte pulled out Snoopy, and they were like.
Yeah, I wasn't serious enough for them.
So that would be a way of sort of negotiating ideology. From different,
I had a question for you, Lars. I was really curious to know what your first encounter with Charlotte's work was. What did you think when you first came across it, and how that panned out?
That's a good question. Well, I think it must have been in 1997, I guess, and I met Charlotte, and I met Charlotte through Sture, through her partner. So a friend of mine who's an artist had bought a poster by Sture in a second-hand bookshop, and he was like, check this out, this is amazing. Sture made these, they're sort of, Sture was a graphic artist mainly.
Yes. Yeah.
And who made these, I guess you could call them psychedelic posters, except that they're not sort of West Coast style.
No.
They look more like John Hartfield or
Yeah.
on colors.
Yeah.
Sort of like, so sort of a mix between data montage and psychedelia. So it was through Sture. So then my friend and I went to visit Sture and Charlotte, and we got talking. So I think, I mean, together with Toby Webster and Will Bradley, I co-curated an exhibition in 2002 or some around that time that took place at the Fruit Market Gallery in Edinburgh and at the Curve Gallery at the Barbican, which was an exhibition, a group show which had both, among other artists, the work of Charlotte and Sture in it. And then I'm a bit ashamed to admit that it took me a long old time to get back to your work, I think. Then I worked with Sture for a while, so I'm one of those male art historians who bear a bit of the responsibility for not having done more about your work, really. Mats Stjernstedt should also be mentioned here, as credit goes to him for making the first big exhibition of your work in Sweden, in your native Sweden.
Yeah.
I mean, so far you have avoided having a big retrospective exhibition at a Swedish museum. I don't know how they haven't come to that idea, but
I'd rather do it in Copenhagen.
But I was. No, I think that I thought it was weird and it was wild. So, and Charlotte's work, and in a way it took me a while to get the hang of it. Also, it was
because I never talk about my picture.
No, you don't.
Sture always talked about his picture, but I don't. I'm not interested. When I have done it, it's gone, and then it's the next one.
No, Sture was when he left. He was let's say present in a different way than you. But also his work was. Check out his posters; they're quite amazing. But he also they're more like they have this sort of meme-like quality. I mean, you immediately identify what they're about. That's not always so clear with Charlotte. I mean, that's this. That's really Charlotte. Really, she dwells on contradictions and paradoxes, and her work is here one moment and there the next. I think that it really has a very interesting shuttling quality to it.
Who or what inspired you to make work like this?
This what? Oh, I don't know. I think. No, I don't know. It's many things. I think it's what's happened in your life and what you got in contact with, what you read and what you see. Yeah.
I mean, there is Hannah Ryggen.
Yeah.
Now I didn't put an image
when I
of her
started,
she was an inspiration.
had made my school and when I in the education in weaving, we couldn't use our own patterns at all. So there was when I got free from the school and could make my own thing. I don't know. It's life.
It's life, but I just wanted to mention this a Swedish Norwegian artist called Hannah Ryggen, and that's Ryggen, and she was, on the side of art, she was an inspiration to Charlotte, but also a very different kind of artist. I mean, Hannah Ryggen lived. She made work in the mid-20th century. Yeah. So she was also like a real sort of modern artist.
Yeah, she lived in Norway, and during the Second World War, she was sitting in her house and made this anti-Nazi thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I first noticed her. That's
it's really, it's great stuff. It's like Ryggen's work is a bit like history painting as weaving. So it was sort of anti-fascist weaving as well. big tapestries.
Yes.
Much larger than your work.
Oh yeah.
But I think that was, I mean, she was an example of someone who made work as a woman, but also used sort of weaving to make art.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
But she was also a very different artist because she was quite she was sort of a Puritan with she was like a craft Puritan. I guess that's what I meant when I said that your work is bad craft, which I mean, which it would be to some people.
Yeah.
Because Henna Rügen, I mean, she only made work with the wool that came from her own sheep.
Yes.
So she raised her own sheep to make sure that, and she dyed her own wool. So I mean,
And
you made work from whatever was at hand, sort of torn bed sheets and
Hi, I'd love to just hear a bit more about what your current relationship with computers and technology looks like. Do you still do any programming?
No. I just do as everybody. I have a mail and so. And there is so many programs now, but I'm not interested. I rather make lace.
You talked about the importance of home in your work and in where you made your work. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Home. Yeah. I don't know. It was so natural for me. We had a big apartment and neighbors that think it was okay that I make noise. So no, I like that. I like to integrate it, and you know, I can take a pause when I want, and yeah, I like that way of being.
Yeah, it was very much about integrating sort of your art production with everyday life.
Yeah,
that idea of sort of being a professional artist.
I don't have to go to a special place and be an artist, so no.
I have a sort of related question, which is about where you were exhibiting your work at that time. Were you making exhibitions out of your apartment, or were you showing in galleries? How were you?
I made some exhibitions, but yeah, not very much, and other things going on in life. So, but of course, some exhibition, and I sold some, and yeah.
But in the 70s and 80s, there was, I mean, those. Am I right that the exhibitions where you showed were mainly sort of they were in Sweden and sometimes in Denmark?
Yeah,
yeah.
And also, vad heter det? Konstföreningar. For a big company.
What are they called? Artist associations, corporate artist associations. Or art clubs of corporations, of companies. Yeah.
Mostly.
And then I mean, with the digital theater, it was the case that, I mean, it was funded by, you got 2 grants to buy computers. So the one grant was a sponsorship from a bank.
Yeah, and, first it was from Styrelsen för teknisk utveckling, for technical.
So the Swedish Board of Technology, basically, I guess. So a state organization.
Yeah,
state-run
lots
organization.
of money. And then we went to the bank, and they said, "Okay, we give you the same." So we could have this digital theater for 5 years.
Yeah. yeah, so when you stopped, it was also because funding
Yeah.
ran out or the money ran out.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. But that's the sort of the funding didn't come from the field of art. It came from sort of state subsidies for technological innovation and from
there was people
a sponsorship from a bank.
Yeah, they were giving money to university for developing these computing things, and they said that it would be interesting to see what an artist can do. So that's why we got money also. Yeah.
And then and then you showed the work that you produced at the Digital Theatre was then showed at in art clubs, or was it was the right
mostly
of, and
because the art world was not interested, because computing, you can't do pictures with computing. You can do much with it, war and things. But it was all negative. Everything was so negative about computer.
So it wasn't really part of the art institution. It wasn't on the radar of the art institutions at that point.
No.
But then, sort of around the turn of the millennium, then there was some artists who began to map out the sort of new media history of Scandinavian art or Swedish art, and then your work was included in some of these new media exhibitions. But
I think when I begin with weaving in the early 60s, it was, weaving was something that old ladies maybe did. But, so, yeah.
Thank you. This might be a bit of a generic question, but do you have a favourite piece or style of art that you've done? Or do you have any particular textiles or medium that you like working with, and why?
I have, I think, one textile, and it is Save Us Art, Yes or No, and also Global Rotation, I think.
Well, that's it. Well, thank you so much to Lars and Charlotte for having this wonderful conversation.